Hey guys, so I wanted to work on some different format for some of the stuff that we want to talk about in this project on wellness and burnout. A lot of the stuff that we've done so far has been based on PowerPoints, based on presentations, kind of fitting around the sort of a presentation that if you want to do an hour of pre-hospital CE or CME, that you'd sit in a conference room and watch on a Zoom meeting. Now that we don't do too much of that anymore. So I wanted to have stuff that wasn't really attached to slides and was just more conversational. Also stuff a little bit shorter because not everybody has 45 minutes to an hour to sit and watch a YouTube video. So just I want to pick some topics that are kind of useful, or at least I think would be kind of useful, and things that are very action oriented. I think that just talking about the theory of this stuff, that's helpful. It can help you think about what's going on, help you take a step back. But I think that most of us are very much focused on what is it that I can do. What's something that I can do, that I can see that I'm getting done, and that I can tell if it's working or if it's not. And so one thing that came up that I thought would be a nice short topic to talk about is this concept of budgeting for chaos. And so there's a podcast I was listening to on the road the other day, and they were talking about how much chaos you can really handle, how much of the unpredictable you can really handle in your life. And one of the speakers was talking about how his personality is just very, very much, he feels comfortable with when he's kind of an outlier in a discussion, or he's basically talking about stuff that people are disagreeing with him on. And the other speaker said, well, that may be true in one part of your life, but the only way that you can really function that way in a confrontational approach to life is if you have a bunch of other areas of your life that are stable. And they talked about this concept that you have a budget of how much chaos you can handle. So I've been thinking about that because, we've talked before in some of the other presentations about how you have, different spheres of your life that interact with each other, but are relatively separate. For example, you have your work life, you have your home life. Those two interact with each other. Problems at home will bleed over into work and vice versa. But also when we're talking about budgeting for stressful situations or budgeting for chaos, if things aren't going well at home and things aren't going well at work, it puts you in a really rough situation that your body has trouble handling. You end up spending most of your time with your adrenal cortical system firing up. That's making all your stress hormones, and that's not really good for your mood, for your mentation, for your physical health. People who are stressed out chronically or chronically adrenergically stimulated, they develop chronic cardiac issues, chronic cardiovascular issues, depression, things like that. So you need some of that, but you also need to build stability and predictability in other parts of your life to be able to engage with the chaos. So why would we even want to engage with chaos? So that's sort of if we want to think about how chaotic or stressful our lives are, we can think at one end we have basically a life where we're not in conflict with people, we're not stressed out, we're everything's going great, and nothing's going wrong, and everything's going our way. And on the other hand, we can just imagine that every day and everywhere we go, from home to work to our hobbies or anything like that, we're just fighting a running gun battle all the time. And so we have those two ends of the spectrum. So why wouldn't you want to live over here at the easy street end of the spectrum? And the reason is that one other part of our brain, our positive signaling parts of our brain, which includes the dopamine, which is short-acting kicks. That's the stuff that gets fired up. Dopamine is what gets fired up with a lot of the drugs of abuse. But dopamine is also what gets fired up when something goes right, when you do something and it works. And so that gives you that short-term reward of doing something in the present that works well. And then we also have our serotonin system. Our serotonin system is a system that a lot of the antidepressants work on to try to bring your serotonin levels up and improve your mood. And the serotonin system is more of a long-term reward system that looks at how you're doing days to weeks to months. And as you're doing well over that time, your serotonin system goes up. Well, the trouble is if you're sitting someplace where everything's going right and there's no challenge, you actually never really engage those systems, and you also don't get really good at solving problems. So if you try to stay in a situation where everything's going really easy, you will actually get yourself into a problem where you're getting weaker all the time. So this would be parallel if we were thinking about working out. Well, when I go to the gym, my muscles hurt afterwards. So in order for not to have my muscles hurt, I won't go to the gym, I won't exercise, and I won't have joint pain, muscle pain from exercising. That seems like a good short-term solution, but the trouble is over the long term you get progressively weaker and progressively weaker, and you set yourself up for chronic pain and chronic issues because you don't have that strength and that stability. So that's psychological as well. If you aren't getting challenged, then you end up getting psychologically weaker, and you actually have decreased mood because you don't have that input into those positive signaling systems. And that's a theoretical concept of being in a situation where nothing's going wrong. That just doesn't happen. In life, something's going to go wrong all the time. So no matter how hard you try to run away from stress and confrontation and chaos and try to isolate yourself from it, it's hopeless because there's always going to be something that's doing that. Let's look at the opposite end of the spectrum. So if you're, if you really just have a very chaotic life and there is no stability, there is no routine, there is no predictability, that's completely unsustainable for the same reason, in that you're not getting those wins that we talked about that stimulate your dopamine and your serotonin systems to increase your mood and increase your psychological strength, because you're just getting beat down all the time. So what you really need to figure out is you need to figure out how to end up in a reasonable balance between stability, predictability, and stress and engagement. And so, I think that's the thought of having this chaos budget. So as you're going through your day, you can step back and take a look at how your day is going. You can look at things like, how many times are you having negative interactions with your spouse? How many times do you have negative interactions with your kids? Is your commute to work full of stress and negative interactions? When you get to work, where are the things that are unrewarding or disappointing that you're dealing with there? Your coworkers, the people who work for you, your boss, the people who you work, my setting as a physician, the patients, how many negative interactions are they're coming from the people that we're there to care for. And then, as you get home, do you have hobbies that are, stressful and engaging, either, positive or negative? What do you do with your free time? Are you spending that engaging with chaotic stuff? Are you on social media or on the news and getting really engaged with politics, or just scrolling through all the bad news that's in your feed and feeding on that, or even fighting with people actively on social media? That's something that all of us can fall into as we disagree with strangers or friends even on social media. So, and how chaotic is your bedtime? And that gets you all the way through the whole day. And if everywhere you go there's chaos, of course you're going to feel horrible. I'm going to not even talk about if you get through your day and everything's great, because if that were true, you wouldn't be watching a video on wellness and burnout. So I think what you, as you're looking at that and you're thinking about your budget for chaos, I think that it's important to make clear decisions on which spheres of your life you would like to fight in. And by fight, I mean do things that are difficult, that you're engaging with, that will improve something about your life. You're either going to succeed at a difficult task, you're going to school and going to classes and learning stuff and getting education, increasing your level of education and credentialing to help with your career. physical health? Are you aggressively, spending time in the gym and or doing sports or things like that are helping you get physically stronger? In order to be able to engage well in those things, you need to build stability elsewhere. And so, for me personally, as I look at questions like this, I think of, the place where I really want to succeed and build right now at this point in my life is working on a lot of these projects that are related to my work, both clinical work, administrative work, projects like this, working on wellness and burnout for giving you guys information that'll help you out. That's where I really want to engage, and so that's where I'm really willing to tolerate, having chaos. In order to do that, I need to have a solid base elsewhere. So, making sure that things are going well with my family, making sure that I'm doing stuff that's helping my physical health, trying to exercise every day, keeping an eye on the diet, things like that, so that I don't have a lot of disruption and chaos and conflict that's pulling time and energy away from the things that I'm trying to work on to make progress on is key. So how do you do that? The one thing that has really helped me out, and this was something that I figured out kind of early on in this project a few years ago, is that if you don't have a routine in your life, in your personal life, and by routine I mean a sequence of habits that you do most every day, then your personal life becomes a bit aimless and a bit aimless and unstructured, and that's just a setup for either having times where you're just drifting and not getting much done, which is unrewarding and unsatisfying, or that you end up kind of blowing in the wind, and basically your personal time ends up just dealing with things that other people are demanding of you, or the things that are kind of confronting you, or things that are just things you engage with opportunistically, like, well, there's nothing to do right now that I had planned, so I'll go watch television, I'll go sit on social media, I'll go watch the news. And these are all things that are not really increasing that serotonin and dopamine system that we talked about, that are going to help our mood long term. So if you're trying to build something or repair something in the professional aspect of your life, then it's very important to build stability in the personal side too. And I think the best way to do that is start working on a morning routine. I think that the unit of things happening in a 24-hour day is a very helpful way to think about life and to approach problem solving in life. And if you're going to think about days as your unit of time, then you need to start at the beginning of the day and start off with, well, what is your habit for what time you get up in the morning? What are the first things that you do when you get up in the morning? What are the second things that you do? Because if I can build a couple hours of routine into my morning where I'm getting ready to go, I'm getting some of these things like exercise or reading or working on projects like this done, then that's very helpful for me having the energy to be able to engage with the things on the professional side of my life where things aren't as predictable, where there is conflict with people at work, even though there is reward with people at work, where some projects fall apart unexpectedly, and to be ready to be able to handle new opportunities as they come up so that you have energy to do that. So if you want to think about how much chaos there is in your life, I think you need to think of it just like how you'd be spending money and setting up a budget. I think that budgetary time, I think you can think of it in a time frame of a day, and you can think of how much of your day is going to be chaotic versus how much of your day can you work on taking control of. And so rather than trying to reduce the stress levels and chaos in the part of your life where you're engaging and you're fighting and you're making progress, I think that there's a lot to be said about, are there other areas of your life where you can build stability so that you can have some stable and predictable parts of the day that make you psychologically stronger to be able to handle those chaotic parts of the day. So I think that's a good place to stop. I think that that makes for a nice little bite-sized piece of stuff we can talk about. I'm going to try to get this up on as both a video that you can watch, and then eventually maybe try to get these up as podcasts. And eventually I'd like to, even potentially do some interviews on these topics. If there's things that you are curious about or that you'd like me to talk about or things that I've brought up in some of the lectures that you've either seen online or seen when we've been face to face on stuff, let me know, because again, I'd like to make some more of these small bite-sized things that people can process, and people can take a look at in found time and not have to budget a big chunk of time. So anyway, thanks for taking the time to listen, and let me know if there's anything else that you guys would be interested in. Take care.